Hello, hi, how are you doing? So, I am the owner of InfoRhino, and I'm going to take you through what I think is pretty incredible regarding OpenAI or Chat GPT as it's known. And what I'm going to show you is a small project which I wanted to write for quite a while, and you'll be able to see how from just talking and writing a small specification, we're in a position where we can create an application. Now, you'll see that the code it comes up with may or may not be perfect, but if you're a developer who's looking to get things done quite quickly, I think it's very powerful. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about InfoRhino. Typically what we do is we consult inside large enterprises doing software relating to data transportation, or ETL as it's known. We also build data warehouses, server-side applications, website applications with .NET Core MVC and .NET MVC, and client-side development too. The reason I say we is because InfoRhino works with other developers and partners on projects, and a couple of them we're working on right now is Findigal, which is running off the back of our web data platform and a lot of data applications that we've built, and we're looking to get investment for that next year. So it's a UK-based property platform to help buyers and sellers understand the market better. And it's not a replication of Rightmove or anything else like that. It's a different type of solution altogether. And we're also quite close to releasing CryptoStato, which is a new data platform for cryptocurrency data. And in fact, it's actually more a general solution for trading in general. We'll be looking to put different data sets through our various data calculation engines and expose this data via an API and also via a website front end. And so this work is all coming together quite nicely. And what I've been looking at over the last couple of weeks is using OpenAI as a mechanism for effectively trying to build certain features quite quickly, certain tools and utilities. And so what you tend to find as a developer is there's a lot of things that you know very well, and what you don't want to do is to continually keep rewriting the same code. So what you don't want to have inside your code base is lots of, for example, if you're going to a database, you don't want to keep coding the using statement all over the place. You want to build some service layer in between it and just call that, and that allows you to encapsulate that call, which thereby, if you wanted to change your repository to point to a different database or something else, you may be able to avoid having to rewrite your code base. And so that's basically how we tend to write our code in a clean way. And what you'll find with when you use OpenAI, it's not as good as what developers may be. However, you can come up with code that's pretty amazing, that will really surprise you, because can save you a lot of time too. So the next thing I have to ask is, will OpenAI, will it replace developers? And I've seen a lot of people talking about this. And one friend of mine, when I showed him what this can do, his first thoughts were, oh, it can remove developers. Now, my friend is a tester, and just as I don't think it will remove testers, I don't think it will remove business analysts. What it will do is the less capable of those individuals will have a harder time getting work. That's because I think effectively what OpenAI is a tool on top of competent developers. And one area where I think can be very powerful, and if you're a customer looking for software engineering or development, I'm very keen to explore this with you, is that I think that solution architects or technical architects who know what they're doing can write specifications for software and then push this through OpenAI. And there's a few tricks I've been learning already, which is where you can give it your code, some of your classes, and that allows you to effectively tell it how you want it to write against your code. So you don't give it the whole code base, but if, for example, I've written my own form of cache service, what that allows me to do is to go to the cache service that I've written and tell it to use that version rather than it doing its own version, because I then got to move that code elsewhere. So there's ways in which you can talk to OpenAI, and I think the better developers who are business minded will really benefit from this technology. So what I'm going to do now, I'm quickly going to run through an application I've been building. Okay, so it's a very simple application in many respects, but what I think as well is it's probable this functionality exists inside different tools that .NET may provide. But I wanted to do this in a way that I would find it useful. And this is always a challenge with development. You tend to find that most things have already been done. It's just you've got a slightly different way of doing it. And the challenge comes in terms of writing very similar code that already exists. And so if you know what you're doing and you've got your objectives clear, you can pretty much cut through this and get the code through OpenAI and then allow yourself to create the application. So I asked it to create a new console application called IR Settings Encryptor. It did that. It gave a use.NET command line there, change directory, and I've asked it to add some packages. And then I told it that I want to use, let's find it in here, the logging service. And I've said I want to get settings files. So these are basically .NET Core files. So one of the ideas is we don't really want passwords and secrets inside .NET Core settings files. And my theory is it may be an idea to compile a library which can be used by the application. Now, of course, we all know that we can view the intermediate language inside .NET Core libraries, but the idea is we can avoid having to make it so obvious to people. And so the idea is that when you have things on a web server, you're never going to be completely, well, you can be completely insulated, but you can do some steps that make it much harder for people to figure things out. There's other things I'll talk about in other discussions elsewhere, so we'll move on from this in a second. So effectively it's gone through, I've asked it to create a settings file, and from this we pretty much have an application. Now it's a very small one, and there's probably a few more features I want to add to this, but I can now plug this into a console application and start playing around with it, and it's pretty awesome that I've come up with this quite quickly. Now, where it struggles is where you have domain-specific requirements. So if you've got specific business cases for your enterprise, it can struggle with that because it's not really having an open understanding of what you're trying to achieve. But surprisingly, it does some pretty cool stuff and is quite good with logic. So I think that OpenAI is not a threat to developers, it's a threat to poor developers who just literally can't envisage the whole business process. And I think that's where we may see some savings. And so if you have a typical SDLC, so software development lifecycle, and you have a number of team members performing different roles, you may be able to cut out some of the non-technical stuff. This is how I see it. But again, they may think they can cut out some of the development stuff. But typically what we find is that a lot of business teams have, say, 10 business users, maybe 5 or 6 business analysts, and then maybe only 2 or 3 developers. Then you have testers, and you have database analysts. You may have DevOps as well. And so you can see how a more technical team using AI to help cut out a lot of the faff with tasks can really help. Finally, there's something I want to talk about as well, which is the question over whether or not OpenAI is basically training itself to use your intelligence and your IP, and that's something that we don't know. The other question is, of course, is that will there be other versions of Chat GPT? Will there be different AI engines? And it's for certain this is going to be the case, because I've been thinking, what would we pay for this? Would I pay for the cost of a developer for OpenAI? Absolutely not. But would it potentially allow me to not have to outsource certain software to development houses that I don't think are actually that capable? And the answer is I think it could, because by the time you've gone through writing a specification and then giving it to these guys, it becomes really complicated to then test and verify the quality of their code. And so we may find that OpenAI removes the need to do so much outsourcing, but we will see. These are early days on this sort of thing, and I don't know if it actually makes things quicker once you've taken all the code, put it in different places. But the other advantage I found is that I can write a fairly quick specification or requirements, and I can then give it to another developer, and from there I can decide, or they can decide, whether to use OpenAI or to write the code themselves. And so in that way, we kind of make the development process a little bit more formal, because I don't really like doing formal development processes, because I think that the best type of software is when you just write it and it works once off, and you don't want to keep maintaining code bases and adding more and more to it. And so I tend to focus on feature by feature, rather than trying to go through the whole SDLC every time I want to add a new feature. And so you may find that if you've got a strongly competent set of developers, it may be better to work with those developers and use OpenAI as an additional mechanism to help improve the quality of your code and potentially speed certain elements up. One other thing I've been trying recently is actually giving it database tables and asking it to then write SQL code, store procedures, and do some of the mapping. And people will say, oh, well, we have entity framework for that sort of thing. But anybody who knows their onions with regards to databases knows that you can't just rely upon the entity framework in terms of performance management. So effectively, this is the end of the discussion on OpenAI and Chat GPT, and I hope you found this useful. You can find out more about InfoRhino by just looking up on a Google search. I'll put something in the links. So take care and look after yourself. Now, finally, before I finish, I'm actually on holiday at the moment in Riga. Had a great time so far. So this is why the background looks a bit strange. It's actually in the Airbnb that I'm staying in. Okay, right. Take care, everyone, and look after yourself. Thanks a lot.